Hi everyone, and welcome to the Fake Love and Flying Monkeys podcast. My name's Nova Gibson and I am your host. My area of expertise is in supporting victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse and other toxic relationships. I'm the principal counsellor at Brighter Outlook Narcissistic Abuse Counselling Service, and I'm also the author of Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about everything from the initial pink cloud you find yourself on at the start through to the horrific discard and the powerful trauma bond that keeps you hooked. So take your imaginary seat on the roller coaster that is narcissistic abuse, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Now you will all, of course, remember a very special guest I had on a couple of weeks ago, the lovely Dr. Christine Cocchiola. That's my Aussie accent coming out there, Christine. My apologies.
Perfect. It's perfect.
So Dr. Christine came on and provided some absolutely amazing insights into a family court and what it's like to navigate that as a domestic violence victim and all of the, in inverted commas, issues that we have, which are making it impossible for victims of domestic violence to see justice. I'm going to say the word corruption, but we're going to talk about that a bit later on too. But today, I actually have Christine's co-author. We spoke about their book, Framed. It's called Framed, in the Underworld, the Family Court Underworld. And Amy Polacko is Christine's co-author. Welcome, Amy. It is so amazing to have you here. What a fantastic book you and Christine have written, Framed. Women in the Family Court Underworld, I should say. Just an incredible book. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I've been a fan of yours and your podcast for a while now, so it's great.
Look, it's my pleasure. I'm so excited to have the both of you in one room. Not really, two different places, but yeah, it's really good to have you both here because I know your book is going to help so many women and probably men too, who are just tearing their hair out, who are just so frustrated with the family court system and are feeling really isolated and all alone, like they're the only ones. So I would love for both of you to tell us about your book. Who wants to go first? Amy?
I will defer to Amy.
Well, I think that this book came from the work that we do on a daily basis where we are helping women in crisis. I'm a divorce coach and also a journalist who writes about these issues when I can to try to shine a light on it. And I think we both felt that we wanted these stories to be told. I mean, we would talk daily almost about how crazy they are, and even we who are dealing with these on a daily basis would be shocked by some of the things we heard. So, I think there are three main objectives for our book. One, we wanted to validate the women, especially who are going through this.
Yeah.
And I think they will see themselves on these pages and feel that they're heard and they're not crazy and we understand them. Mm. And then also we want to educate and warn women who are dating maybe or thinking about getting married. You're not thinking this could happen, right? So we hope that you read these stories and they're a cautionary tale. And then we really hope that we will enact change. We will start a fire with this book. We hope people get tipped off when they read it. Yeah. And they want to do something by the end.
Yeah. The thing I just quickly, the thing I love about the both of you. Not only are you professionals with so many letters after your name because of all the work you've done, the research that you've done, and Amy, you're an award-winning journalist as well as a divorce coach. But the thing that makes you guys the real experts, I think, is the fact that you've both been through this. You're both victims of domestic violence. So you've been on both sides of the fence as an expert, but also a victim. So who can have more empathy and understanding for a victim than the both of you? And that's what's going to make this book just so much more validating, I think, for victims. So Christine, how did you work together in writing this book?
Sure. And I just wanted to kind of touch a little bit on the podcast I did with you before, because primarily the focus was, what is coercive control,
yes.
Right? And then understanding that what happens with these abusers is that they use the family court system to wield more control. And that's why the impetus of this book is about how do we really expose, as Amy said, this idea of what's really happening, warning people. But like, I think it's important that people have a primer, right? Like, understanding what this abuse is understanding that abuse doesn't have to be physical to really be harmful. Actually, we know more trauma occurs when abuse is something that we can't actually visually see. That doesn't mean it's invisible, by the way. Mm-hmm. A lot of people call it invisible. It doesn't mean it's invisible. It just means that we maybe don't have a bruise, right? And so people can't really speak to it about that. But I think, what Amy and I did is we said, let's just pull together as many stories as we can. Yeah. We have heartbreaking stories, as you could imagine. It's interesting that, I think the stories almost in some way kind of show what it could be like in the beginning of the relationship, but also when the aha moment, like, wait a minute, something doesn't seem right. The veil starts to pull back. Yeah. And as you know, once the victim starts to get a lead onto who this perpetrator is, that's when they actually tend to get worse. Mm-hmm. We know with coercive control, abuse intensifies post-separation, and every single one of these stories is an example of that intensification, ending sadly with, a story by Kathy Sherlock, who Amy did the story about a mom who lost her child. So this is what we're dealing with in today's world, is a court system that doesn't protect children at all.
Oh, my goodness. I just wanted your insights, guys, into something I read the other day, which just kind of blew my mind, really. And that was that criminal court judges are getting the training, and because they've got, I guess, oversee the coercive control legislation, they're getting the education and the training in coercive control rather than family court judges. This was happening in the UK, I believe. But, this has got to perpetuate the problems that domestic violence victims have in getting justice in the family court, because if the person who is overseeing or forming the outcomes of the case, the mediators, the family court reporters, the independent children lawyers, if they're not being trained in personality disorders and coercive control, then what hope have we got? Because, as we know, the abusers go to court, put that mask on, and the victim's frustrated, erratic, depressed, frantic, like a victim is, and the abuser manipulates the court. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. So can you give us, Amy, a little more insight into some of the stories? I don't want any spoilers, obviously, to ruin it for everyone, but maybe just give us a general overview of a few of the stories that you've written about.
Sure, I'd love to read from one of them from Australia.
Absolutely.
But I think important for everyone to know that this is a diverse group of women from around the world, 22 stories from the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia. So
Wow.
this is not just a specific country problem. This is a global
It's a
problem.
global epidemic. And so that's it. These stories are really representative of the entire world population.
Absolutely. And on our cover, we say, know the abuser's playbook. There's a common thread through these stories for sure, because abusers have an MO. They have a playbook that they go by, and you have to know what that is. But there also are different things about each story. So there's something unique about each one. I'd love to read from this one. It was Aurora. And we've used pseudonyms for everyone in the book. She's from Australia, and the story is called The Judge's New Clothes. So she realized that her daughter was, saying that she was being sexually abused by her father, and they're in court, and the mother is trying to prove this. Yeah. And this is just a little snippet from her story. She says, "Leaving my perpetrator was worse than staying with him. I've wished 1,000 times I never left. I was never believed by the courts, lawyers, or family court report writer, and least of all, the independent children's lawyer, the guardian ad litem, GAL. It all amounted to total destruction of my life, my child's life, and a complete removal of me as a mother in her life. He now has more control over me than ever before. I feel like my womb has been robbed. My child will have the psychological damage of me taking her to the empty family courthouse and being told to wait for me at the child care facility, then being removed by her father to live with him, never to see or speak to her mother again for over 90 days, and never to return to her home, her community, belongings, and pets of 7 years. All because of her lying and perpetrating father claimed parental alienation. This was a father determined to be an unacceptable no-contact risk by the Family Court and the Magistrates Court of Australia for 2 years up until the day he took her. The court order labeled me as an unacceptable risk and psychological abuser. The order says that I made my child believe she had been sexually abused when she wasn't." So, we see this over and over again where the protective parent is accused.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's just, it's, I wish I could say that I hadn't heard it so many times before, but it just gets me every time I hear a story like that. The protective parent is punished for, trying to be protective, to keep their child from being harmed further. Oh my goodness. Just heartbreaking.
It is. And I would say that, I heard the term today. It was somebody called it predatory parental alienation. But one of the things that some of the people in the world that Amy and I work with is we try to veer away from that term entirely, because what we keep seeing over and over again is it's being co-opted by abusive parents. They use it in court and claim that the mother is an alienator. And I say mother, and we know, as you know, and I know your book that I recently just read, there are male victims. But what Amy and I continue to see, and what many of the advocates in the world continue to see, is that there is an oppression. It's a gendered oppression against women, is what it is. And women are at a disadvantage simply because of patriarchal systems. And that in general, the court system is, of course, built on that, but many of the people working in the court system believe in that. We actually have research that proves over and over again that women are disbelieved when they come forward with about abuse, that women are considered hysterical or dramatic. Amy wrote an amazing article about the tropes of this, right? Like the idea that there is misogyny very present, and that women are pathologized. So our book is called Woman in the Family Court Underworld for a reason.
Yes.
And unfortunately, most of the time, the moneyed parent tends to be someone who is male. And so that money gets used in the system over and over again to further oppress.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I don't understand. Sorry.
Absolutely. So financial abuse, as we know, goes hand in hand with this type of coercive this type of abuse, coercive control, narcissistic abuse, which, yes, Christine, as you've highlighted, what does that mean? That means the abuser gets the $5,000 a day barrister, the $1 million lawyer, and the victim is punished again, sometimes having to self-represent because they can't find a lawyer who'll go pro bono, and they don't even know the asset pool because, they haven't been told what their abuser has earned. They've been kept on a cash budget, here's your $100 for the week. And sometimes they don't even know. A lot of the time they don't even know that's abuse because they're normal. So, yeah, it is so unfair, and I don't know how to fix it other than making people aware, like you are with the stories in your book, because people feel all alone. Amy, do you hear from that woman now in Australia? How is she going now? Because we've got to consider the long-term effects of this. It doesn't, you lose your child. What that means is that, you've lost 2 years of their life while their brain's still growing, so it doesn't even matter if it gets turned around later on. Those years are gone.
I think that's an excellent point, because so many of these women and the women Dr. C and I deal with, they have very real physical and emotional devastation. I know this woman, in fact, has had trouble working, has had health problems. But what has been a light in her life is becoming active in this movement. And, there has been a bit of good news in Australia, right? Because just this year, the law was repealed that said that equal shared parenting time should be the presumption. And because of that, so much, even though before it said that domestic violence was an exception, there still was this presumption that the child should be with both parents no matter what. And I think that really gave judges and all sorts of other quote unquote professionals this green light to just override any red flags and warning signs and say, well, the child really should have a relationship with both parents, right? Yeah. So this woman, Aurora, is very active in Australia and beyond. And, that's our story too. We saw what happens in this system and we could not look away. We had to devote our lives to helping. And so many women we coach say that, I want to write a book. I want to help. How can I help? What can I do to pass legislation?
Tell your story.
So
yeah.
They have to do something for themselves, for their children, and for other mothers out there, I think.
Yeah. So, Christine, what's the legislation at the moment in the US? Like, that's just changed in Australia, thank goodness. I remember when that law came in back in 2006, I believe, and it just paved the way for abusers to come in and go, that's my property. I want 50% of it at least. And I think it made judges' jobs easier. And of course, brought out that, hysterical, she's a woman alienating the children from, the other parent. It made that even more, prolific. So what are the laws at the moment in the US?
Well, right now we have 7 states that have codified coercive control as a form of domestic abuse, and the 7th one was Massachusetts just recently, and that is really exciting. We actually have a call to action section in our book where we talk about all of these legislative pieces throughout the world. I mean, the UK has criminalized coercive control. In Queensland just recently criminalized coercive control. We don't have that legislation in the United States yet, unless you include a little part of Hawaii's law that actually has it as a misdemeanor, I believe. But overall, the big deal, I think the way to contextualize this for people is that in the United States, 43 states, if you do not have a bruise, you're not a victim.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it really comes down to. And, if you want a restraining order, then you probably need to have a bruise. So, there's some judges who will be a little more flexible about all of that. But the fact that we're trying to codify it as a form of domestic abuse is really important, because as we talked about in the previous podcast, it is the underpinning of all abuse. And until we begin to actually recognize we need to pivot to the perpetrator, because to your point, you started this podcast today talking about the criminalization and how in the UK, the criminal attorneys are trained. Well, what we don't realize is that family court is working with criminals every single day. They just they don't either acknowledge it or they don't know it. Yeah. And these people are literally the worst of the worst human beings. Yeah. And they are interested in, they're sadistic, they're interested in getting revenge, and they're interested in letting other people feel pain. They like other people to feel pain. A guy who robs a grocery store doesn't like other people to feel pain. But the guy in the family court who's doing this to mothers and trying to rob her of her children, steal her children away, he wants her to feel real pain. So those are the real criminals.
Yeah, absolutely. Coercive control is always there, coexisting with any other type of domestic violence, e.g., physical abuse. But there is always coercive control going on. And I believe that the stats are something like, well, I don't know the exact stats, but I know that the most dangerous time for a woman is when she leaves, and women are losing their lives. I'm going to say they're unalived, just so podcast doesn't get taken off, but they're unalived, and often there is no history of any type of physical abuse, but rather it's come out this ongoing coercive control. And when she's gone to leave and he's lost his control of her, that's it. So that those insights and that research indicates that if they're not unalive, then the abuser's going to go for the jugular in the family court, because they're going to go for what hurts them the most. So if they can't unalive them, they're going to go for their children. Not that they want them, they just don't want you to have them. So they are absolutely sadistic, and it's just incredible that these the people working in the judiciary and the family court don't understand the basics of domestic violence, because they're dealing with so many abusers. Just quickly, Amy, I don't know what the stats are over there, but we have, I believe, about a 4 to 6% of cases actually getting to court. So what that means is like 96% people, resolve it outside court. So 4%, let's just go with that, actually go to court. So what that suggests to me is that 4%, every single couple that go into court, there is going to be a power imbalance, and there's going to be an abuser, which makes it, even more important that they understand this type of abuse. Yeah. So, I was wondering if you've got any idea over there of like how many people actually get there, and what the stats are around that.
It's about the same. It's about 5% that end up going to trial, because most of them do settle. And I think, in one of these articles I wrote for Ms. Magazine, which is, of course, a feminist U.S. magazine, an expert in Canada who is an attorney also, Susan Zakor, said that she really believed that judges, they're seeing these cases that are filled with conflict. We don't call them high conflict cases because there's a high conflict perpetrator, right, an abuser and a victim. But she said it's easier for these judges to believe that women are crazy than that so many men could possibly be abusive. So when you talk about training for judges, of course, I'm 100% for that. But I think that's just one part of it, because, right? Because, how much do they not want to see? And how much are they influenced by these societal historic beliefs about women, this misogyny that she's hell-bent on revenge. She's scorned because he's moved on with a new girlfriend, and so she's making up these charges.
These stereotypes that impact their judgment. Yeah.
Exactly. And stereotypes about messy divorces too.
Yeah.
That there's two sides to every story and everybody's at fault here. And clearly they don't understand coercive control and narcissistic abuse.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to highlight those stats, because they're not high conflict, they're abusive. But if that very small number of cases are actually getting to court, that's because there is a power imbalance, and what they are deeming as high conflict is one abuser, normally most of the time one abuser, and one person reacting to the abuse. So they've got to at least understand reactive abuse, because often the victims, reactions, they're being set up in manufactured situations, are being used against them to call it a high conflict relationship. They're just going tit for tat. They're as bad as each other, War of the Roses type thing, because they don't see or understand that coercive control.
Yeah, I do a clinician, coach, and attorney training, and in it, I actually try to pivot a little bit from reactive abuse to self-defense.
Yeah.
Because when I've been trapped over and over again, or I've been mistreated by the judicial system, the betrayal over and over and over again happening to me, I am maybe reactive, but that's not reactive abuse. That is me trying to defend myself finally.
Yeah, it's a bad term, isn't it? Reactive abuse. Yeah. I hate using it. And because it is you defending yourself.
Yeah. So, if we could pivot a little bit and begin saying, hey, you know what? She's actually just acting in self-defense after years of being trapped, months or weeks, whatever it is. That would be, I think, like, those are examples of, to your point, I think a lot of judges would like to say, oh, look at her, she's crazy, or she's lost her mind, or why is she crying so much? Oh, because basically she can't see her children for the next 2 weeks. I mean, like it makes perfect sense if you understand the trauma that people have experienced. And it's almost, to Amy's point, they don't care. They just want the case over with. I posted about this yesterday or the day before, this idea that family court judges, when they go through law school, and lawyers, when they go through law school, they never take a class on domestic abuse. And I don't even like to call it domestic violence, because I feel like everybody then thinks about it as violent.
Physical.
Right? And so, how is it that you can be working in family court, which is considered kind of like not the favorite place to work? Let's be honest. Judges don't say, oh, I want to do family court. I'm so excited to do family court. Yeah, exactly. They don't do that. Yeah. So, attorneys, maybe there's money to be made if they're working in a well-off area. But the bottom line is that there is a group of people who are profiting off of the trafficking of our children, basically.
Yeah, that's so true. And the judges are really just at the pointy end, like as you said earlier, Amy. There's so many other cogs to this wheel, to this system, and the judge is going to make their recommendations based on a lot of these other cogs in the wheel, if you will. Their reports, such as the ICL, the family reporter, the mediator. So if one part in the system is broken, the whole system is. So all of those people need education, because the family reporter, they're going to write a report that the judge is going to look at and go, oh, well, they're the expert, so I've got to listen to what they say, and the mediator, etc. So it's just it's broken, and it just needs an overhaul, doesn't it?
Yeah, because I think that you're right. They need education, but they also need accountability, because to Dr. C's point, they're making a lot of money. I mean, in the US, billions of dollars, right? Yeah. So worldwide, this is happening everywhere. And what is their incentive to change? It's an old boys network. But sadly, we see a lot of women participating to be part of the network professionally, whether you're an attorney or an evaluator. And then we're also seeing, I think, that judges don't want, it on their hands if something goes wrong in a family, if something happens to the mother or the child. So they defer to the evaluator's report. That way they can say, if something happened, I just went with the professional's report.
Yeah. So that is just insane. Where does the buck stop? Because if the judge does that, they're just going to, deflect to someone else, because it should stop with the judge, and the judge should, investigate those decisions, and, as you said, be totally 100%, accountable. That's just crazy. It's just passing the buck everywhere. So, what hope do women have?
Yeah, and I think we live in a world, right, a society that we lived through a period of time in the 70s, certainly, where fathers did not get custody because mothers were stay-at-home moms, right, and the dad was working, and oftentimes fathers weren't necessarily fighting for it. Yeah. But now we live in a world where there's this assumption that 50-50 parenting is appropriate, and that's not. Children are better off having one healthy, safe parent than to be parented by one person who's living in trauma mode, frankly, because they have to send their child to someone who's unsafe. I can't even, I had a mom today who is just like, my child tells me I don't want to go to dad's house today. I don't feel safe. What is that mother supposed to say? And her biggest fear is that if she doesn't make her child go, she's going to be accused as an alienator.
Parental alienation. Yeah, I hear that every day too. What
it's just heartbreaking.
Put them in handcuffs and go, you must go.
It's just, and I think about, from a trauma perspective, as someone who is specifically researched the experiences of children, it's so heartbreaking that this is an intergenerational trauma that could be prevented very simply by giving children safety. I mean, it's not hard. And I just ask, like, any judges or lawyers who are listening, what if this was your sister, your mother, your daughter, someone you love experiencing this? Would you make a better decision? Would you actually stand up for what's right versus what gets you more cases, versus what makes you have a positive relationship with these judges? We have to be clear about this. And I know Amy totally agrees with, there is so much collusion and relationship building in the court system. If you want to be a judge, if you want to be a lawyer who the judge actually likes you and favors you, then you're not going to be in there all the time saying this woman's a victim. You're just not. Which is just insane that we're living in that world.
Yeah. So are you saying that even female lawyers and family reporters and that other being the equivalent of the pick me girl, aligning with the misogynistic patriarchal system, to get more work, to collude with them, in other words, despite their female, peers, sisters being victimized. Wow, that's incredible.
I think sadly, that's the case. Yeah. They are looking out for themselves. I had a coaching client whose attorney said, I'm not going to die on a hill for you. I mean, they said the quiet part out loud. In other words, I care more about my career than going to bat for you and doing what is right. So I think we hear that all the time. In Connecticut, where we live in the United States, we have a law, Jennifer's Law, that was passed. And, it expands the definition of domestic abuse. Yeah. I wrote an article about this, the fact that a lot of attorneys won't use it because they don't want to tick off the judge.
Tick off the judge by using a law?
Exactly. The judges don't know what it means. The judges don't like it. There's all these excuses. And so in some cases, some women have had success being pro se, or at least standing up in court and bringing up this law themselves. In other words, if you won't do it for me, who's looking out for me? I've got to do it myself. Yeah. So that's what we're seeing also.
So you can't even, so they've been financially abused. So they've got no money, but they perhaps get a lawyer to act pro bono, and the lawyer says, well, I have to actually go against my when I swore in as a lawyer, where I said I would act zealously for my client. I actually have to go to get against that because the judge doesn't like this law. So I can only protect you a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're talking about ethics, right? And I think that, as a therapist, I see over and over again therapists gaslighting their clients, refusing to stand up against an abuser. I see this happen. I mean, I know, Amy, and I see it all the time in family court where, even I think as a woman working in the family court system, there is a need to almost prove yourself because you have to prove yourself to the patriarchy, right? And so you might actually we've had female GALs, et cetera, that we are familiar with that have been more horrifying than the men sometimes, you know. And so, that's why when people say, why do you say you're against the patriarchy? Listen, the patriarchy is not all about men. The patriarchy is about the systemic issues that are going on that are impacting both men and women, boys and girls. I mean, we all should care about ensuring that the patriarchy doesn't actually create foundations in every part of our lives. Unfortunately, it has. It's really actually distressing, and I think this conversation can be a little distressing because it's like, how is this going on right under our noses? And that there is not a system. And I think, Amy and I talk about this in the book, that literally in 1607, there was a law that was made that gave judges, basically judicial immunity. As long as they followed a couple of rules, I could read them to you, but basically they have to follow the rules of their jurisdiction. As long as they do that, even if they have malicious intent, they can't be held to account. I mean, what world are we living in that there's no accountability in a court system that is supposed to be protecting children? Yeah.
Unbelievable. These archaic laws. I'm not going to mention any others that I think are archaic, but it's just like fluidity, empathy, women are allowed to vote now, let's get with the times and get rid of these stereotypes. Oh my goodness. And the fact that, judges just, as you said, Christine, just want to get it out the door, that, the family court system's backed up and they just want to get through the cases. And this is to the detriment of victims who are not having their abuse understood, and therefore they're being abused twice by the abuser and then the system, and their abuser is being rewarded for abusing. And this idea of fairness, where I'm so glad it's changed now in Australia. I've yet to see how that will end up, but because of just the systemic abuse that has happened for the last 20 years. But the idea that it should be fair for parents, that's what it's about. It's not about what's best for the child. It's about what's fair for the children, avoiding lawsuits. I see this in the child protection system too, where it's assumed that children are better off with kin, with family, and that's what they always strive for. And look, if you can get the right loving family to foster that child, to take care of that child, absolutely, over a stranger. But what they're not taking into account is the generational abuse, which means they're giving the children often to the abuser who abused the abuser, and holds their children over their head because that's the power they now have. So once again, it boils down to these systemic issues where what's fair for the adults in the situation is not taking into consideration what's fair for the children. And also we need to look at individual cases. Yeah, it just needs an overhaul, doesn't it? An overhaul. And what do you call it over in the States when you have a total investigation and they just go through everything, rip all the files out of everyone's cabinets? What do you call that over there?
House cleaning.
House cleaning. We need them to do some major house cleaning in the family court system, because victims are, that they're suffering, which means the children are suffering and the abusers are being rewarded. So look, your book, Amy and Christine, is just going to be so valuable to victims, of course, who feel alone, like it just happened to me, and maybe I was unlucky, but also to paving the way for a movement. This is global. It's an epidemic. Hopefully,
we hope people are angry.
Yeah.
I hope people are really angry. And again, we think this book is for anyone who cares about women in general, anyone who cares about women, because it's a warning. And if you have a young person in your life who's maybe just starting to date, they should probably read the book. It's going to be, this is, as Amy and I always say, this is not an easy read, but it's a must read.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you think you know family court, think again.
Yeah, if you think you're just going to walk in there and have a fair outcome because you're in a court and because your abuser has put his hand or her hand on the Bible and sworn to tell the truth, and then you find out later they lie pathologically and their pulse doesn't change because they won't be told what to do by anyone. It's just another platform to extend the domestic violence and have an audience to manipulate. Yeah. So anyway, look, I just want to say thank you so much. Everyone listening to this podcast, get angry. Don't direct the anger at your abuser because they'll love that. Certainly don't direct it at yourself. Direct your anger at the politicians. We need to instigate change to protect victims. So get angry, but get angry in a productive way, that by writing those letters and contacting your local member. Okay. All right, Dr. Christine and Amy, thank you so much. Don't forget, guys, Amy and Christine's book is called Framed: Women in the Family Court Underworld. You need to read it. If you, as Christine said, are entering into a relationship, you just know you've got the info. And, of course, if you are involved with it, and we want to this book is going to validate you and hopefully instigate change. So thank you so much, Christine and Amy, for joining me here on this podcast, and thank you so much for writing this book.
Thank you so much for having us.
And that brings us to the end of another Fake Love and Flying Monkeys episode. Oh my goodness, guys, you so need to buy this book. If you have been, if you are experiencing, or if you are predicting a stint in the family court, no matter where you are in the world, this book will help you to feel not alone. Anyway, I really, really hope that you found some information in this book that was insightful. I know the stories from other people who have gone through what you are going to experience will at the very least help you to feel validated. And I am so grateful that Amy and Christine found the time to come and talk about the hideous experience of victims in the family court, just so we can work out a way forward and hopefully get a major overhaul of the family court system. Okay, on that note, guys, it's bye from me for now. If you would like to have a one-on-one session with me, a counseling session, no matter where you are in the world, please just see my website link below, and I would love to be able to support you in your narcissistic abuse recovery. And of course, don't forget to look out for my best-selling book, Fake Love: Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. On that note, it's bye from me for now. Until next time, remember, You are worthy of love, and you are worthy of so much more than a lifetime of fake love and flying monkeys.